Well, welcome everybody to part 2 of the Book of Mormon Metals Map Geography. And this is going to be part 2, the metals map. Referring to our overview, we've passed part 1 where we talked about the general considerations of the Book of Mormon imposed on us by the Book of Mormon itself. And we've also talked about the 4 Book of Mormon maps described, 3 of them described by Mormon, and one of them, a very small land moron, described by Moroni. So now we're going to look at what I refer to as the metals map, again informed to us by the Book of Mormon itself. When we look at the Book of Mormon map in general, this is how it's aligned. What we can now do is we can now, from the Book of Mormon, where it is described where minerals are found in great abundance, we can now map those minerals to these lands. When we talk about metals in abundance, we need to remember that they didn't have satellites, they didn't have aircraft that they could fly over and do amazing technology and detect what metals were in the earth below. They had to basically see evidence of metals on the surface. And what metals are referenced in the Book of Mormon? Well, we have gold, which is AU, silver, which is AG, and I've colored them appropriately, copper, which is CU, and we have iron referenced FE in black. Now, the Book of Mormon also refers to brass. Well, in order to have brass, you've also got to have zinc. So we can assume that wherever it talks about brass, there had to be copper and zinc. Zinc, of course, ZN, or as we say in New Zealand, Z. All right, so our first land referenced is First Inheritance. We're told that when they landed in America, they in First Inheritance, which is by the West Sea, they found in great abundance gold, silver, and copper. Then when Nephi flees from his brothers and goes east and up into the land of Nephi, there also are metals in great abundance. And Nephi, of course, was very skilled already in working metals, and he taught this to his people. So there they had gold, silver, copper. They obviously had to have zinc because they talk about bronze. And they also had iron. The next reference to metals is found in the land Zarahemla. Zarahemla is described as having gold and silver in abundance. Next, further north, the land of Moron, where the Jaredite kings reigned from, we had, similar to the land Nephi, we had a great abundance of gold, silver, copper, zinc, and iron. So those are the lands and the metals that they have. I'd like you to particularly notice the relationship between them. The west-east relationship of First Inheritance in Nephi is important to note. And then north of them is Zarahemla with gold and silver, and then further north we have again a great abundance near the west coast of these metals in the land Moron. Interestingly, when I researched this, I said, okay, well, let me go to the US Geological Survey. Let me go to them and find out what they say. They have a bunch of country maps where are depicted on those country maps where the major deposits of metals are. Okay? Now, of course, these are commercial grade level sufficient metals that are in an abundant manner. So what I found is that the metals map, when you look at North and South America together, only had one solution. This is the solution that the metals map provides. First Inheritance would have to have been in Ecuador. The land Nephi would have to have been in Colombia. The land Zarahemla somewhere in Central America, up in, from Costa Rica on up into the southern parts of Mexico. And then the land Moron with its metals had to be around the area of what we call today Guadalajara, west of Mexico City, in the area of the west coast of Mexico. Interestingly, the USGS maps did not show copper in the Guadalajara area. However, what I found was that in the historic records, for example, we had the Spanish conquistadors, they specifically record that they went into that area because the natives were mining copper, and they were interested in getting their hands on the copper in that area. So it may just be that those resources have been significantly depleted, and so the USGS is not showing much in the way of copper in that area at this time. With the metals map yielding only one solution, we see how that maps or suggests where these various lands should be. So first inheritance should be in the Ecuador region, the land of Nephi east and up, eastward, and more specifically we would say northeast, but still eastward, and up into the highlands of Colombia. And then we have Zarahemla somewhere up in the Mesoamerica area. And then the land Moron, as we talked about, with the land Desolation south of it and a little bit east of it, and with that narrow neck of land with the narrow pass by the West Sea that we'll talk about later in the presentation. Notice also that the small neck of land with the narrow strip of wilderness fits very nicely into the Isthmus of Panama, as we call it today, between the East Sea and the West Sea. All right, so let's look at first inheritance. This is the USGS map. Notice in 3 areas you have significant abundance of gold, silver, and copper. Down in this area, the central area near the coast, and this area up near the coast. And remember, they land from the ocean. So these metals are found close to the coast and in great abundance all through there. Peru doesn't work because what you find an abundance of on the coasts of Peru is iron. And that's not talked about at all in the Book of Mormon as being in that area. Now Nephi. So remember, Nephi flees his brothers and those that go with him, and they flee and they go eastward and upward into what they refer to as the land Nephi, with its great abundance of gold, silver, copper, zinc by deduction, so they have brass, and iron. And we find that throughout this red shaded area, but particularly concentrated in the area around Quito and Medellin, up in the mountains there of Colombia. Look, we continue north now. We look at Panama. Well, Panama has gold and it has copper, but it has no silver. Therefore, by deduction, Panama cannot be first inheritance on the west coast. It cannot be Nephi, the highland area east of first inheritance, and it cannot be Zarahemla. Next country north we come to is Costa Rica. Costa Rica has gold, silver, and copper, but so it potentially could be first inheritance, except that there's no eastern highlands with the more abundant metals. So it can't be first inheritance on the west coast. It can't be the land Nephi. It doesn't fit either one of those. You don't have that west coast metals grouping with eastern highlands metal grouping. Doesn't exist there. It could be Zarahemla because it has both gold and silver. Next we have Nicaragua, and just like Costa Rica, same thing. It has gold and silver, so it could potentially be Zarahemla. We find the same thing true with Honduras. Gold and silver, yes, it could be Zarahemla, but you don't have those abundant minerals, other minerals, and that west coast eastern highland relationship existing there either. Same thing is true in El Salvador. It has gold and silver, but no copper, so although it is on the west coast, but so it can't be first inheritance. It cannot be, it doesn't have eastern highlands with the more abundant metals. It could, however, be Zarahemla. Guatemala. Guatemala has gold, silver, copper in abundance. However, there's not, again, that west coast eastern highland relationship. So it can't be first inheritance, it can't be Nephi, but it could be Zarahemla. Up into Mexico next, and we see concentrated in the Guadalajara area, again, that abundance of metals, except for, according to the USGS, copper, but we have the historic record that says there was active mining of copper there, and that's why the Spanish went in there to conquer it, or one of the reasons they gave. So again, the metals map yields to us just this one solution. Again, first inheritance down in Ecuador. Land Nephi would be up in Colombia. And then you've got that small neck of land, narrow strip of wilderness that matches the Isthmus of Panama between these seas. And then you've got gold and silver, with Zarahemla being one of those areas in there. And then past that narrow neck of land with the narrow pass by the West Sea that we'll talk about in a later part of the presentation, into the area of Guadalajara for the land Moron.